Sheen Shot.
Yeah, boy.
What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning into the Sheen Shots channel. Today, we are going to take a look at the Speedster skill tree. Everything from what the skills are to what builds might utilize them the most. This skill tree is unique since it only gives you one skill that actually does an attack. It can be very easy to pass this skill tree up with your limited selection of breakthrough points. But trust me, the Speedster might be just what you're looking for. Head to Harmattan and walk to the back right end of town. Here, you will find Surge, the Speedster trainer. Once again, we have 3 tiers of skills. Tier 1 can be purchased with any build regardless of breakthrough points. The Tier 2 skill requires one of your 3 breakthrough points and is required to buy any of the Tier 3 abilities. Efficiency is the first and most useful skill from the Speedster tree. This is a passive ability that increases your maximum stamina by 25. Health can be increased by a number of different skills and passives in the game, but stamina only has 2 skills that can increase the amount you have. This makes it an extremely vital item to buy early on. It can and should be bought by every single build you create. 25 extra stamina is nothing to laugh at, especially if you give up a lot of your life force to mana. Don't forget this skill even if you don't want to play as a speedster. Next up, we have Probe. This is the only skill from the Speedster that has an attack function. It does very little damage on its own, but can be used to buff up your character quite a bit. There are 5 different attacks you can do with Probe, and each one gets stronger and does more damage until you reach the 5th attack. At that point, you max out and continue to hit the 5th attack until you lose the level. These attacks give you something called Alertness. It is a buff that increases each time you hit an enemy with Probe, but it also decreases each time you get hit. You're granted a plus 5% dodge window up to 4 stacks. Unfortunately, this buff also grants you -5 damage resistance. Essentially, you have a much larger dodge window, but any hit you receive will cost you more than usual. This can be utilized very well by ranged characters and heavy melee boys. I would not recommend using it much with mages, but it can work if set up correctly. The specific probe attacks have additional effects that are as follows. Probe will gain you 1 alertness level. Bait will gain you 1 alertness level. Taunt will gain you another alertness level and inflict confusion on the enemy. Mark will gain you another alertness level and also inflict pain on the enemy. Flourish is the last attack you can get with the Probe skill, so it does not gain you an alertness level. However, Flourish does the most damage out of all the attacks and does extra impact. Metabolic Purge is the last tier 1 skill from the Speedster. This grants you a passive 10% resistance to corruption. Many people will see this as kind of lame since corruption is only seen in the Antique Plateau and isn't that hard to deal with. What not everyone knows, however, is that Scourge enemies can actually inflict you with corruption as you fight them. This mostly happens with the Illuminator horrors since they shoot out corruption at you and can very easily hit you even if you were paying attention. Definitely do not get this skill if you plan on using the Blood Sigil, as it will take you longer to become corrupted and create Darkstones. It really does make corruption areas seem less menacing, especially in the dungeons, so be sure to grab it if you can. It is now time for the beloved Tier 2 skill. You will be giving up one of your 3 breakthrough points, but man is it worth it. Daredevil is a passive skill that reduces the cooldowns of all skills by 10% per alertness level. This is incredibly powerful since you can almost get 50% cooldown reduction if your alertness level is all the way up. Your skills will come back much faster than they usually would. Small skills such as Sweep Kick come back instantly, and larger skills such as Rage only take until your next fight to be usable again. This allows you to continuously fight enemies while using your high damage abilities. You will need to be careful still, since higher alertness levels do decrease your damage resistance. But if you're more regularly one-shotting enemies, it won't matter how much resistance you have because no one will be hitting you. Just remember that you will not always have 4 stacks of alertness and must use Probe or potions to get them back. The next 2 skills you can buy as a Speedster are Prime and Unerring Read. Both of these skills require you to have some alertness level to activate them and will take that same amount away from you. For example, using Prime will require and remove 2 alertness levels. Using Unerring Read will require and remove 1 alertness level. The alertness is kind of a theme for this skill tree, so you will need to be good at keeping higher levels if you want to excel in this playstyle. Prime is a pretty powerful skill that instantly resets the cooldown of any skill you use in the next 3 minutes. Let's say you're using a skill such as Counter Strike that does insane damage but also has 100 seconds of cooldown time. There is no way you could ever use its attack twice in the same fight. It simply takes too long to come back. Now let's say you use Prime and then Counter Strike. Your high damage ability is used and can then be used again immediately after the attack hits. This makes your engagements much faster since you don't have to rely on smaller attacks as much. Again, Prime will use 2 alertness levels, so it doesn't mean you can always use it right away. Due to how powerful this skill is, it does require 500 seconds of cooldown time. You won't be able to double power attack in every single fight, but it will come in handy for those more tanky enemies. Unerring Reed is a little more lenient on the cooldown time, sitting at 120 seconds. This is still about the length of a large fight though, so don't expect to spam it. Unerring Reed costs 1 alertness level and will cancel any hit received in the next 20 seconds. This allows you to charge into a fight and get high damage attacks before being immediately knocked back by your opponent. You can negate their first attack and sometimes kill them before they have a chance to get the second one in. It is a pretty simple skill, but makes battles much easier if you are not that good at dodging. The last 2 skills on the Speedster tree are both passives and require you to take a path. Choosing one will disable the other and you will no longer have the second option. The 2 skills are called Blitz and Anticipation. Pay close attention to the symbols seen on the skill as they represent the kind of playstyle you can expect with each path. Blitz is the skill on the left and looks something like someone running. This ability will increase the sprinting speed of your character by 5% per alertness level. It will also increase your running attack damage by 10% per alertness level. I do not recommend using this if you never do a running attack. They can be useful and make it harder for enemies to hit you. However, I usually forget to do this in a battle, and so I would waste a skill slot if I chose this. It grants much more damage if you do a running attack though, so if you're good at it, Blitz will be a very good skill for you. Anticipation is the passive skill on the right and grants +2 protection per alertness. I highly recommend this skill if you go for a tanky build. Protection is stupid good when getting hit with physical attacks. This grants you 8 protection if at alertness level 4 and can add up to over 20 protection for armored up builds. It is also nice to have more protection since alertness gives you negative damage resistance. Protection and resistance are not the same thing, but higher protection almost negates attacks at a certain point, so it evens you out a little bit and makes you less vulnerable when trying to hit with probe. Both Blitz and Anticipation are very good skills and might be equal unlike some skills in other trees. Either are fun to play with and will increase what you are able to do. Just be aware that they provide 2 very different playstyles and should not be used in the same manner. Most of the Speedster skills are passives, so you don't have to use as many skills to actually do something in the game. The only downside is that none of your skills do anything unless you have alertness levels. Be sure to buy probe and play around with it before committing to this skill tree. I love the skills, but for the life of me can't get out of a fight with alertness levels. And since that is kind of the whole point of the Speedster tree, it becomes almost completely useless to me. Also, don't forget that some builds will make use of this more easily than others. Ranged builds can use the skills to do high damage, but then you have to go in to get the probe attacks. Melee builds are used to close engagements, so they can regularly use probe without much change in playstyle. However, your chances of never getting hit while up close decrease the longer the fight goes on. I personally think it's a difficult skill tree to use at first, but can be very fun and extremely liberating once you get it down. Outward can be brutal, so any skills that increase speed of any kind seem like a godsend. Hopefully this guide helped you understand the Speedster skill tree a little bit better, and hopefully you can now utilize it to be better at Outward. Comment down below if you are having trouble with any of the skill trees, and I will catch you guys next time.